All right, we'll get started here. Good morning, everybody. Thank you for joining us today. We have a really great topic, important topic to go over this morning, how to start your kitchen project. A couple housekeeping items before we get started. Please use the Q&A in Zoom. If any questions come up along the way, we have time for a lot of questions. There were great questions sent in the registration that we will get to. And if anything comes up, please use the Q&A to let us know. We will be recording this session and sharing this out afterwards. We'll be emailing emailing you at the registration email you sent over. You'll be able to find this webinar recording and all of our previous webinar recordings on our YouTube channel. Be sure to check that out. All of our previous topics are there. And with all of that out of the way, presenting today is our CEO, Steve Scheinkoff, and jumping in for the Q&A is Francesco Froyo, our general manager. So I'll turn it over to you, Steve.
Thank you, Pat. Very tan, Fran Froyo, just come back from vacation. How to start your kitchen project. You're gonna like this one. It's like, when you finally do a renovation, and someone gives you a blank paper and they say, design a kitchen, right? You go to a kitchen designer. Well, we're going to cover a step-by-step guide to make the process a lot easier. So I thought it might be fun. Wait a minute. Sorry, I'm having a little problem with my PowerPoint. To go over some really nice renovations like this one that have some not so obvious problems. You'll figure out what they are by the end of this. But take a look at this. And let me give you a hint. It's not the rattan furniture if you don't like. But there's one really big problem in this kitchen that you probably don't want to design in yours. Not to be outdone, I want to show you one of my favorite. This is one of the best kitchens on House. I think it was either last year or 2021. I love this kitchen. Take a look at it. The black windows match with the black hardware. They mix the metals with the faucets. You got nice Hubbard and Ford chandeliers, and two pretty big problems as well. So we want to avoid those. And by the end, we're going to give you a nice functional plan that'll be your style, and we're going to get it on time and on budget for you too. So, with all due respect, let's get started. And we're going to start at the ABCs, literally. Architects, builders, contractors. You want to spend some time here. And it's a two-part process. You want to check reviews, but you want to look at their portfolios and ask for references too. Now, I live in a Boston brownstone, or I used to. If you're planning a colonial in Wellesley, you want the person that's built colonials before and check the references. Now, this is a two-part process, right? You want to check the companies, and then you want to check the project managers, the PMs. They're the quarterback of the team. They interface with the trades. They keep the schedules going. They're the ones that communicate directly with you the most. So really, and I want to give you kind of like a bad example. One of my friends builds buildings for a living. Built a 60-unit project on time, on budget. Couldn't be happier with the company. 2 years later, they're in litigation. The reason the company didn't change, the project manager did. Went from like being all world to being the new person. You don't want the new person. So just make sure once you pick the company, and there's a lot of good ones, you want to make sure the project manager's up to the task. You don't want to train them, okay? Because, as I always say, good tradespeople solve problems. They also know the best people, bad ones cause them. So let's look at your space, okay? How will you use it? How much space do we have? How do you cook? Does not use? And really the question that a lot of people ask is, what are we trying to highlight? Windows, oceans, gardens, statues, what appliances do you use and what appliances do you not use? Okay, because that'll be part of our later in our plan when we plan all this. And what is your lifestyle, right? A lot of people get in with designers. You still want your lifestyle. Now, this isn't mine. I appreciate it. That's a La Cornu Fay with the farmer sink on the side. I'm more contemporary. I don't know why they put that bench in the middle. It seems like if you need to get to the sink and stove, that's kind of in the middle. And that fixture is called the Capa di Monte. This is in my style kitchen. I mean, the way I cook, you wouldn't put an Oriental rug beneath anything that I would use. So So just keep in mind, especially when you're working with designers, what is your style? And let's flesh that out too. Okay. Let's talk about, my first renovation back in 2014. It's too bad I don't have the before pictures, but I redesigned the kitchen and the whole living space, right? This is a really nice place, my favorite place I've probably ever lived. I had a nice roof deck that we rebuilt out. We had the wine when I was drinking wine, Thermador Sub-Zero stove and refrigerator. And then we had a lifestyle change. We got one of these. Now, that 5th floor walk-up, which was so nice to go to a roof deck. Now, in the South End, for those people that don't know the South End of Boston, parking is limited, right? So now you got to bring the baby up and then bring your groceries on the first floor and then play demolition derby to get that parking spot, right? So that changed the way I looked at kitchens and design, just having a baby. Now, if she was 7, which she is now, obviously her mom did her hair in that picture. If she was 7, I could say, Sophie, go up the stairs, go up and meet daddy up on the, in the living area. We'll pretend that she actually listens, but that's the difference, because it made me, I moved across the street, bought a burnt out brownstone. And what I did was, with the parking areas, I put the kitchen in the basement. Because you bring the baby in, put the baby on the sofa, and then you bring in your bundles. It was a lot easier. If she was 7, I would probably have made that a play area and put the kitchen on the 2nd floor. So you have to do what's right for you where you are and assess your lifestyle. Now, I say that because a lot of you that I talk to are empty nesters, like my sister. My sister lived in Medfield for 20 years and sold that. She had a little beach cottage, sold that, bought a smaller house on the water in Falmouth, right? All she ever wanted was windows and a coffee maker. And that's what she got. She was so fanatical about it that she put her TV in her hood, which you can do, right? So really assess where you are and assess where you will be when you design your kitchen, okay? So where do you start? You get the blank page. Where do you start? Now, this may sound odd from an appliance person, but the place where I always started, the place where is easier for you to start would be the sink. Okay, sink completes the kitchen triangle. It's a 1940s term for your sink, stovetop, and dishwasher, the most used. No need to vent a sink. Venting is going to become very important. And it's a hot topic now with banning gas ranges. You got better lighting opportunities. You can put lights over a sink. You can't do that when you've got a cooking area. And they go anywhere. You can go under windows, they're great in islands. That's where you want to put it. Now, the first picture, that's got to be a showroom, because what you don't want to do is put a huge sink and then walk back and forth to that stove, right? So that's got to be a showroom as I look at it now, right? So let's start at the sink. And this is the kitchen triangle, 1940s term, right? But really it's based on never moving 1 or 2 steps when you're cooking from sink to stovetop, all right? And you want to place you want to place that sink near the stove. So the refrigerators in wall oven, this is a contentious point for a lot of people, refrigerators and wall ovens can go anywhere, because you don't need to get into the refrigerator right away the way you need to stir your pot. Now, I cook bacon for my daughter every morning. It takes 20 minutes. You put the bacon strips side by side so they cook each other. It's 20 minutes crispy. So I don't really check it until it's about 18 minutes. Whereas when I'm making soup or making her spaghetti, I'm stirring that pot all the time. So you're really on top of your cooktop. You're really not on top of anything else. So that's why cooktop sink should be centralized, okay? Now, if we look at 2 very different people, my sister who flips homes for a living, and me, being more or less in the showroom kitchen design, we look where we put our sinks, right? Now, you only have one real appliance decision, okay? And that is wall oven and cooktop versus a full range, okay? Stovetop cooking, as we said, should be centralized. Now, wall ovens can be placed anywhere, okay? So how much space do you have? If we're talking smaller kitchens, one of the reasons why we do a lot of more kitchen design classes, because, 30 years ago, we don't have formal living and dining spaces. We have one great room like I'm showing you here. So you have more opportunities to do more in your kitchen than our parents ever could, right? So if I had to basically say, for smaller kitchens, I think stoves are more appropriate. But if you want more personalized cooking, like we're looking at both my kitchens, right? We're looking at stove, looking at wall oven. It could be double ovens if I wanted to. You got a steam oven. It could be a microwave up top there. It could be a warming drawer. You could personalize your cooking more with wall ovens. That said, you would need that cabinet, which is a 30-inch cabinet, plus the 36-inch there, okay, on the cooktop, for a total of 76 inches, where I just have a 36-inch range for cooking with stovetop and single oven. So you can personalize better, more room. You also don't need to, you don't bend as much. Like you bend for that 36-inch oven, you do not bend in the wall oven. So those are all things to consider as you choose between the two, right? Let's talk about secondary cooking. On the left is our Thermador display in our Dorchester store. An old chef used to say, that's a speed oven. She wanted it on top for whatever reason, right? So she put it on top. Where I put my microwave, I never really use a microwave, so I put it away from the plant. Again, the more you use it, the more centralized you want it. Now you could do all sorts of secondary cooking, microwaves, steam ovens, speed ovens, warming drawers, any number of things that you could put either in the plan close to the wall oven, like a warming drawer underneath it, or if you don't use as much as like I do, put it away somewhere. Put it outside the sink stove combo, the kitchen triangle. Now let's talk about the biggest mistake people make. Right now, I was at the Fuji House in Needham. I'm originally from Needham, but the Fuji House was never there. You take a look at the people that really cook. A lot of people say, well, I like to entertain my guests while they cook. Well, you look at people that actually entertain guests for a living. What do they do for ventilation? It's always the same hood. If you take a look at the first picture on the left, it's a big overhanging hood. Okay. They're not downdrafts. They're not smaller hoods. They're not ceiling hoods. They're big hoods because that smoke and grease needs to be captured. And it only gets captured by a hood, right? And if we take a look at the vast majority of ventilation products out there, they don't do the job, right? Like if we're saying that smoke needs to be captured, your downdraft can't capture with that little flange right there at the top. That's where the steam and smoke goes down. And then, gravity takes everything up. The downdraft has to force it down, right? And then you have an elbow, the elbow at outside your house that reduces the static flow. Downdrafts, a lot of people put them in islands. I think it's a last resort. If you really cook, you do not want to do a downdraft. And I'll show you where to put your cooking at the end, more towards the end as well. Hoods, same thing, right? Your two power burners are always in the front. Now, if you look at power burners on regular gas ranges, I'm not even talking about pro ranges. Regular gas ranges, the LG's now got two 20,000 BTU burners on the left and right-hand side of the range, not including the griddle and the two smaller burners, right? So those burners are at 23 inches. So you want a hood that'll cover that, right? And most hoods, a lot of hoods are 21 inches. So what happens is the smoke goes by. Now you're talking about, being in gas ranges and poor environments. What's happened is that the ranges I sold when I started in 1986, average of 40,000 BTUs. Now they're almost double, or at least 60 to 70,000 BTUs. At the same time, when you have a new project, the windows are all sealed. You get better sealing equipment, so all that smoke and grease and burning fat causes nitrogen oxide, carbon monoxide, particulate matter, formaldehyde. All this stuff stays in your home longer. That's where the real problem is. Back in when my mom had her old caloric, she had drafty windows. She had, the caloric was maybe 25, 30,000 BTUs total. So that's why you need to ventilate more. Okay. So let's look at over-the-range microwaves, right? You're looking at a Wolf professional range with an over-range microwave. Over-range microwaves, I love the concept when it's introduced. You centralize your cooking. I'm all for that. However, they're only 16 inches deep and 350 CFM. Now, that wolf is 23 inches off the base. So that's not going to work. It's going to work horribly. In fact, the only thing good in this picture is the fact that they open the windows, right? And I know that for factors, I had to move to Jamaica Plain apartment for a little bit. And I have a Kenmore Elite 1990s range. And when I cook, it bypasses that hood. That's why on the left-hand side, you see that little induction burner. I put that in the middle of the stove, and then that's when I cook, because it can't handle those front burners. And that stuff stays in your house a longer period of time. Ceiling fans, I'm not sold on either. Again, no capture area. And people, you got to read the instructions. Now, I understand, look at the beautiful bay in the background and everything else. You probably don't want a hood overhanging that. I get that. But ceiling hoods, most people put them on cathedral ceilings. In the instructions, it's 4 to 7 feet off the cooking surface. That's more than 4 to 7 feet off the cooking surface, right? Plus, you have no capture. Now, when I first moved to Cambridge back in 1987, I lived in a place that had a new tone over a Roper range that was like maybe 30,000 BTUs. Now, the new tone was like a bath fan, but it was a really powerful one. But all the grease and everything was just was attached to the ceiling. It just didn't look that good. So I'm not really sold on ceiling hoods. I think you can do better. So if we were to talk about ventilation, how do I do it right? Well, you probably know the first one is CFM, or cubic feet per minute, or how many cubes of air is exhausted every 60 seconds. So when I say 600 CFM fan, that's 600 cubes per minute, right? To give you an idea, 1200 CFM is a small room of air every single minute leaving your house. That's why we have makeup laws I'll get to in a second. The second thing is depth of hood. Hoods should be a minimum of 23 inches deep to cover those front burners that you cook on. Ducting runs, straight up, shorter runs without transitions or elbows to the outside of the vest. Duct sizes, people don't make these mistakes. They read instructions, but it's typically 8 to 10 inch round, rigid. If you do the flexible, the grease can get caught in the flexes. I think they're illegal now. Anyway, now makeup here. I said 1200 CFM is a small room of air leaving your house per minute. Now, the reason why I got to make that up is because air doesn't abhors a vacuum, right? So if rooms of air are leaving, 30 rooms of air leave every 30 minutes, right? The air's got to be made up somewhere, and that's typically your furnace, your attic, garage, very unhealthy air. So that's why I need makeup air. You would do that through your HVAC system most commonly, but if you can't do that, it's 10 feet of the regulation stayed 10 feet away from your range on the opposite side. So you're not breathing in the air you're exhausting in your range. And remember, all those last vents are including downdrafts, are last resort only. So let's talk about refrigeration. I said doesn't need to be central. Again, there's regular, which sticks out. Then you have counter depth. Counter depth means that the door and the handle protrude, but the actual box is occluded by the cabinets around it. Then you have professional, which is another form of counter depth with the compressors on the top. And then you have integrated, which is flat to the cabinet. It doesn't stick out, right? Those are your 4 types. Of course, if you want, a lot of people like, will have secondary, for the kids. It's great for the kids. Yogurts, give them their own place to go in, so not in the main unit. Fruits and vegetables you like to chop, you put those central as well. You can do drawers, you can do ice makers, you can do beverage centers. There's all sorts of opportunities that you can put either in that triangle or outside if you're not in them frequently. Like wine, you can do the same thing with wine. Wine isn't just the under counters. You're looking at the up top is our Hanover display. That's a true wine cabinet on the left there. And then you got Gaggenau, Thermador Sub-Zero. I'll have the stand-ups that's in our Dorchester showroom is the Gaggenau display, right? All right, I've thrown a lot of stuff at you, okay? Basically it's all placement, and then it's cooking and ventilation, and everything kind of falls in after that. But let me bring it back a little bit. One of the things I'm not talking about measurements and everything, because dishwashers are all 24 inches. You can get an 18 as well. Typically, if you're renovating your kitchen, you're going to do a 24. There's no 25 or 28. or 31. They're all 24. Stoves fit, well, small ones are 20, 24, but they all fit 30, 36, 48, 60. I know some of you are thinking French ranges. Those are for custom kitchens. Those are available in like 44, 60, 54, 70, up to 100 inches. But typically, American sizes are 30, 36, 48, 60. So you can't really get it wrong. Refrigerators are the dimensions I put down there. Typically, the most common ones are for families are 36, city ones are 30, the bigger ones are 42 and 48. Now they all fit the same sizes. So once you pick out the cooking, the ventilation and the placement, it all kinds of goes in like a puzzle, an easy puzzle, right? To give you an idea, look at all these wall ovens. These are all wall ovens we have on display. They all fit the same cabinet. It's impossible to get wrong. Now, you get wall ovens that'll fit retro, like 24 and 27, but for new construction, it's all the same dimension. This is the best piece of advice I've ever got, right? We did an outdoor webinar, and outdoor is even crazier with the amount of options and things you can do. So I was talking to one of the guys at Urban Bonfire. They do the custom kitchens. They go, once you place everything, chalk it off and just cook and see, pretend to cook and see if it all works for you, and then redo it if you don't like it. Certainly a lot easier doing that than doing the electrical, the plumbing, and figuring out, well, you want the refrigerator over here, not over there. So just once you pick out the space and you put the sink and the stove and the refrigerators, just chalk it off and see if it makes sense to you, especially in the secondary cooking. All right, now let's talk about real problems. The real appliance problem, and I put the slide in because a lot of people are asking in the questions, which do you like? How long does it last? And really there's a lot of good brands, Sub-Zero, obviously, Thermador, Blue Star's been mentioned, a lot of good brands. And the best brand could be, once you get to, because the specs are kind of a minutia, is like, well, which brand offers the best service in your area? I know there's a lot of people from California, New York on the call, and that's almost where you give the edge to, because we did 34,000 service calls, just Yale in the Boston area, because 9.5% of them need to be fixed within the first year. Maintenance, perhaps customer education, but all counts as a service call if you need to call us to come to your house. So just be mindful of that, right? Everyone thinks we're a sales company, but we really are a service install company, almost 3 to 1 or 2.5 to 1, right? So your key takeaways is, first of all, find the right people, all of them, especially your contractor and your PM. Then understand your space. Where are you and where will you be? Start with your sink. I honestly believe that's the best place to start. And then your toughest decision is going to be cooking. After that, you want to vent properly. And where do you put the secondary things that are important to you, right? And then you want to figure out who's going to fix your appliances before you buy them, and go with the company with the best service, right? So let's get back to those kitchens. Anyone see a problem with this one being through this webinar? You've graduated a Yale webinar. Well, we take a look at, we're downdrafting a professional range. Now, the average pro range is going to be somewhere between, say, 90 and 130,000 BTUs going through a flange about that size. It's all good if this is a summer place, you're never going to use it, but it's going to be, you're going to have that stuff in your kitchen for a long period of time if you don't. So the way I would look at this is I would swap the sink and the stovetop and put a hood in there. I would have probably put, you can still, you probably wouldn't have, you won't have the window in the middle, but you can spread the windows out a little bit and have a place where you can actually cook and not have that air in your house. What about this one? This one, stovetop and sink are too far away, and there's no reason for that. The second one, they're probably not going to get, is the hood isn't deep enough. Another, because that shelving's like 12 inches, that hood looks like it only sticks out 6. And when you have see that thing in the middle of that cooktop, that's a grill or griddle. That's going to create even more smoke. People are talking about CFM. I like maxing the CFM, because the total cost between, say, external 1200 CFM fan and 600 external, it's really not that much. So you almost max it up for when you burn something on a grill or griddle. But what I would do again is I would shift the cooktop and the wall oven. Now, that wall oven, you see the refrigerator and the freezer. See that? That's on the other side. Those are integrated. I put those together, put the cooktop over there, and you have pretty much the same beautiful kitchen. And I do like this. They put a lot of thought into it, obviously, you know, with just the different finishes. It all looks so good. All right. Take a look at this one, right? When you say, well, I don't have enough space, look what they did here. That's a French range. It's either a La Cornue or a La Canche range, where you can customize a range to do anything you want. But you got a speed oven, a coffee system, a microwave, a 42-inch French door, and a large range and not a lot of space, right? So that's something to think about. And just so you know, all the stuff is free to you. We don't spam or any of that stuff. There's the free appliance buying guide. There's the venting guide that you can go to our learning center and pick up. Our next webinar is kitchen renovation mistakes to avoid. We're going to break down some kitchens that could be better. And, you know, we blog 3 times a week, and we have our own YouTube channel. We post 3 videos a week as well. For that, I will say thank you for listening. And you got some really good questions that we want to get to.
Cool. Thank you, Steve. We'll be sure to include all these links in the follow-up email you guys will receive with this recording. Yeah, add your questions to the Q&A. We had a great question come in during the presentation. Steve and Fran, can a steam oven be our only oven? It's one we've heard before. What goes into making that decision?
I'd say, well, it depends what you're cooking, right? If you're talking about the steam ovens that are the best, like Wolf Miele, especially Miele, like people that are new for steam, what steam is going to do is it's going to add moisture. So the food is going to taste better when it comes out of it. Because when you look at how we cook, we're basically taking moisture out, whether we're microwaving it, God forbid, or whether we're, which targets moisture, by the way, or whether we're cooking, we're taking the moisture nutrients out. Steam doesn't do that. The problem is that the best ones, you're not fitting your Christmas turkey in. Now, Thermador's got their large steam oven that's basically new. I'm not really sold on that as, it's a good oven. I'm not sold to that as a steam. I haven't had as much experience, but if you have anything that, but I would say that yes, you could do that and you'd probably be better for it. But for the big stuff like turkey dinners, I don't think so. Won't fit.
Yeah, exactly. And that's where you run into some of those problems is the size. And like you said, there's some that are starting to be a little bit bigger. Like Miele has one that's a little bit bigger now, the Thermador. But part of the deal with the steam is it does need to be in a smaller kind of setting to get the true benefit of all the steam as well. But truly, I mean, you can, other than size, you can cook anything in there and you don't even need to use the steam in a lot of those. You can use it as just convection. You can cook really just about anything in there. So other than the size, it can be, but like Steve said, if you're looking for, you know, that 20-pound turkey, something like that, that could definitely be difficult in the steam oven. Probably won't fit in there.
You know, cut it up. Cut up.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, there you go.
You're going to cut it up anyway. And that's what
Yeah, very true.
We have another question in the chat. What are the pros and cons of windows behind a 48-inch range? If you wanted the windows, could they be fixed non-opening? Would that be better or worse?
Oh, there's no pros, right? I mean, we as a country go from like, you know, we go to extremes. We're banning gas ranges. And, you know, one of the pictures I showed in the webinar was a 16-inch range with no ventilation. I don't think, you know, it's funny because the air inside your house is way worse than the air outside. And we're so worried about the air outside. And there's makeup air laws, but there's no laws of ventilation. So if the question is, can I do it? Yes. Would I do it? Absolutely not. I mean, with a 48-inch stove, you're looking at, you know, 150,000 BTUs and all that stuff. When you go to the website of all the stuff, when you burn fat, you create all those toxic fumes and you have a beautiful renovation. And let's forget about the fact that Rowan comes up with a figure, their event company, that's 4 quarts of grease per year. Let's forget that. But all that air is going to stay in your house a longer period of time. You know, I don't think people are getting incredibly sick. You're not going to get cancer per se, but kids with respiratory problems you hear more of, and it seems, but it's just a bad idea. And here's the thing, here's a trick. You know, I put a blog post together of what you do when you can't vent. You know, historical societies don't let you do things, and I get all that. Best thing you could do is open a window. Cook on the back burners for bad vents, get an air cleaner, all sorts of stuff, but don't go in there with a 48, any pro range or even any regular range, because they're so souped up, and don't vent. It's a real problem, I think.
Yeah, and in a 48-inch, you know, the vast majority of those are going to have a grill or a griddle, which emits way more smoke and heat than a typical burner. And those windows definitely won't be looking very good for very long. Once you start cooking on those, you'll have even just having a tough time keeping those clean for sure.
You know, it's funny. We griddled with a grill last year. No, with the DCS, we grilled, and it was against the store. It wasn't even kind of towards it, and the grease on that window was just, it was palpable, and you just don't want that in your house. I mean, you know, you can do a lot of different stuff, and you don't even have to do the sink stovetop, which I think should be the basis of any good design, but vent properly, really. Just, you know, 30 years from now, we're going to say this was all the vent, you know.
Yeah. Even with a vent there, I saw she had added that she would still do a vent there, but even with the vent, I think having the windows right behind the range either way is not a great idea. They're going to be very difficult to keep clean. Like we said, it's just the venting, you really want to have some non-combustible material back there, a nice backsplash, something like that, even stainless steel, or, you know, a nice tile backsplash.
Yeah, that too. I misread the question.
We have a bunch of kind of project planning questions from the registration we can start to dive into.
Good.
How much do you want to spend is the first question. How do you budget for a remodel when costs can be unpredictable if somebody's just doing this for the first time, potentially?
That's a really, really good question. I'm trying to remember back, because I've done 2 kitchens. It's like, you know, you set a budget, right? Here's the thing, right? I go into this more in the next renovation. It's like, you know, the things that you think are like that you need to do, like you need to have that certain tile, you need to have that certain floor, you need to have that certain thing, right? Once you move in, like 6 months later, you're like, what was I thinking? You know, the best materials are kind of like a good way to cost cut, but budgeting is really your call, because you can take it from soup to nuts. I mean, you know, for appliances, we talk about basic, affordable luxury where you're still getting, you know, a slide-in range and a refrigerator, to ultra luxury where you can get Sub-Zero, and then you can go next step up and get La Cornue and get something customized. I mean, you know, you can get a really nice kitchen package for $5,000, or you can just spend 300 grand. The first thing's up to you. And the second thing is to understand the differences between, you know, the grades between a custom, semi-custom, and a standard cabinet, and really avail yourself of those options. The actual budget's set by you, but once you get into the, you know, the cost of everything, be prepared to value engineer. You still can get a good look, but you can still get a good look at a cheaper price, is what I'm saying. Because I know this, because, you know, I was maniacal about a certain tile, and I'm like, which tile was I maniacal about? I don't even remember anymore, you know?
We have a question it came in the Q&A here. Keep putting questions in the Q&A as they come in. Can you discuss recirculating range vents versus vented options?
Yeah, I can take that. So really, it's, you know, recirculating is an option if you absolutely cannot vent outside. So what that does is it'll take a hood or an over-the-range microwave, something like that. It'll vent it and then kind of pass that air through a charcoal filter and then push all that same air right back into the room. So, you know, I'd say it's better than nothing, but it's really not venting anything outside. Again, if you have no possible way of venting out, that's certainly an option. But I would tell you, when it comes to like a professional gas range or something like that, that's really not an option for those styles of ranges, but maybe a smaller, a 30-inch freestanding range, something like that. Electric induction, certainly. It's doable, but I would say kind of as a last case resort, because really all you're doing is taking that same air, passing it through a filter that you really need to change pretty consistently if you do cook a lot, and then throws that air right back into the room.
Yeah, the gas is really, a lot of those gases don't get filtered. Here's the thing. A lot of these recirculating vents blow right back in your face. So
Yeah.
get one of those triangular, the European style hoods, and they have the vents going this way from like the stem, right? So the air goes this way instead of going right back at you. So, but yeah, it's last resort only. It's better than nothing, but that's not the standard.
What level of detail of communication, documentation, and frequency should I expect from a contractor during my project?
Well, that's up to you. You know, some people, if you hire the right people, you let them run. But I think, you know, especially I cover this more in the renovation mistakes to avoid. You want to check in a week, and the more documentation, better, in case things go sideways. Well, I thought this was going to be in here. The more you get it in an actual document, the more I don't want to, what's the word, liable, accountable. The more accountable they will be, right? So I would check in weekly and get a plan of what's going on, and so there's no delays. And the more interested you are, the better off you will be. You know, if you're gonna be laissez-faire, you may want to get a buyer's agent to help you, especially on the bigger projects. But I just wouldn't leave it a chance. And it's because you're in so much peril now, because appliances are okay, finally, unless you're buying a Sub-Zero Wolf or a Bosch dishwasher, pretty much get whatever you want. But a lot of the materials, you know, you got to move fast to get them, you know, because the difference, you know, if you go out of stock and then they can't arrange the plumbers, the electricians, it's just a cascade of bad things. So I would check in every week. Make it a Tuesday a check-in day, right? Because Fridays, you know, in the summer we all go away. So do it like on a Tuesday. You know, Monday's a busy day, Friday's a busy day. Do it Tuesday and Wednesday, and do it weekly.
Next up, we have some product questions. What's the life expectancy of higher end brands like Wolf, Sub-Zero, Blue Star, Miele, maybe, and what's the higher end, and maybe what's that compared to, you know, more middle of the road brands?
Well, there's no official stats.
Yeah.
We keep them for a year because we give free warranty service, so we're pretty sure about that. I think, you know, one of the things is I'll give you a story. One of my friends calls me a Sub-Zero wine cooler is broken. You know, why did I talk him into it even though I didn't? You know, all this sort of thing. So I waited for him in and I go, when was the last time you cleaned under it? Silence, right? If you don't maintain these things, and a lot of people don't, you know, if you're not cleaning that compressor on that Sub-Zero, it's only a matter of time. You know, we talk about front load washers. You're putting too much detergent, only a matter of time, right? So if you're doing the maintenance, you should expect a long period of time. That said, appliances in general last 6 to 10 years. My parents' Sub-Zero, and here's the problem. Parents' Sub-Zero is 17 years. We can't get a new one because there aren't any. And we can't get the part for 6 weeks. So we have loaners there. Parts are a problem, certainly. But I would say you should get 10 years plus on the high end, provided you're maintaining it, cleaning it, and doing the right thing, especially on the refrigeration side. Wine coolers, ice makers every 6 months. If you do that, you should get 10 years plus, I think.
Yeah, definitely. And then, you know, on a kind of a standard brand or kind of non-professional appliances, you know, I'd say you're probably 7, 8 years or so, right around there on average nowadays. And like Steve said, there's so much maintenance today. Not so much maintenance, it's pretty easy maintenance. It's just kind of staying consistent with it. And, you know, like the front load washer, you're cleaning the gaskets, you're doing all those things. And they're easy things, but then when you kind of don't do them and let them kind of stack up, you know, it can definitely cause havoc for some of these appliances.
Thanks, guys. Question about induction. I prefer an induction range. Can you discuss things to look for or ask? What are the ventilation requirements? when somebody's considering induction?
Yeah, with induction, I'd say that there's not as much as you're looking for as far as like BTUs and the difference there, kind of that you look for gas, because really they're all powerful and they're all so efficient. But there's certainly features that you're going to look for as far as convenience and the way that the cooktop is laid out, and do they have bridge burners where you can combine together to use a griddle or a larger pot or pan or something like that. I'd say it's more about convenience and use there, not so much power, because again, they're all really going to be powerful because they're so efficient that you're going to get even more power, and they're going to be faster and more control than you get with gas with just about any induction cooktop. And then as far as ventilation, technically I would say when compared to gas, they're really, not in Massachusetts anyway, not really a requirement for a lot of ventilation there. But I would always tell you, we always recommend having proper ventilation, because you're not getting the fumes and things like that you get with gas. But certainly you do a lot of, high heat cooking, stir frying, things like that. You're still going to get a lot of smoke in the home, and you're going to want to make sure that you have proper ventilation to continue to vent that out too.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. You need to vent. If you cook, you need to vent.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a misnomer that somehow induction's clean. It does everything better because gas is a 1930s technology or 1920s, and induction's in 1980s. Actually, it was started, the patents were at early 1900s. First ones were produced in 1950s. 1980s is when they were mass produced, and then they went off market to 2000. So you're talking about a much more efficient unit, but it still needs to vent. If you're walking or griddling, then you need to vent properly. And I agree. There's certain ones that are better, especially when you go to 36-inch. Fisher Belga's got a 5,500 BTU, got a 5,500 watt burner.
Mm-hmm.
That's really powerful. And there's other ones that are, but even the 3,700 watts is still going to be better than a pro burner.
We had a question about brands as well, and I know we just have been updating our articles and videos of about induction cooking. But do you guys want to chat briefly about brands to consider in the induction cooking segment?
Yeah. First of all, we're having there's a shortage of induction ranges, period, for every brand. So really what you want to, the most reliable one you can buy is Bosch. And do you know the reason why? I just figured it out. It's taken me like years, because it's only 40 amps. A lot of these ranges are 50 amps. So when you get a voltage spike or something, it'll knock out the control panel. Right now you can get, I was talking to our master electrician, you get what's called a smoother, which smooths the spikes. It's another $600 on Amazon. That'll prevent that from happening. Bosch is the most reliable, but you're gonna have problems with induction. And there's a lot of ranges that, we've been studying induction for a while that are really, what's the word I'm looking for? Not that good. Some of these Italian brands, the oven sizes are like, you can get a 6.3 cubic foot, 30-inch induction. But do you know what the average cubic footage of a 36-inch is? 4 cubic feet. How is it getting a bigger unit and a smaller oven? You got to be very careful. I would stay with the major brands. Major brands to me are Wolf when they finally come out with theirs. Miele's got a good one. Fisher Pagel's got a good one in 36. The 30 is really small. Bosch is really good. I like the LG Studio too.
Mm-hmm.
Even we don't sell Samsung Frigidaire. We don't sell Frigidaire either. They're okay. Samsung's okay. And stick with the major brand. Once you get to those, I look at these companies that sell 160 brands. They got 20 induction brands, and I'm thinking they don't service any of these because it would be a real hassle. So you really have to be careful, because there's good and then there's not so good, and you want to stay away from that.
Yeah, and you're definitely starting to see now more of the larger ranges starting to come in induction in 36, where you have Wolf, Thermador just introduced a 36-inch. So you're definitely going to start to see kind of a lot more of those professional brands try to incorporate larger 36 and even 48-inch induction, which really isn't out there to a great point right now, but definitely you'll see some of that start to come out from some of these major brands.
Yeah, Blue Star's working on their 48, supposedly.
Back to some project planning questions. What's the best way to find and choose a contractor? And is an architect always needed for a kitchen project?
Well, that all depends. I think, we renovate everything at Yale without architects still, don't we, Fran?
Yeah.
Okay. But here's what I would follow the process, is really, you want to vet all of them based on what they've done. And you got to be very, very careful. I've had good and bad, and it's just such an awful experience. You want to vet them, and you want to vet the PMs. And then you want to collaborate with them as far as, I think you do need an architect. I'm not sure whether, I don't think there's any law whether you need to or not, but I think for placement, for water and power and electricity, I think the contractors are going to be more comfortable with spacing and everything if you work with an architect. I think, especially the bigger renovations, you definitely need to.
Next up, this is a question. The question was, do you have flooring companies that you work with? But maybe do you want to tack on to that? How do you go about maybe vetting vendors, or finding vendors to find those finishes for your project?
Yeah, I think it's similar to kind of like what Steve was saying too, with architects and builders. I mean, really a lot of these, it's just kind of like what you do every day, and it's really checking multiple sources, talking to multiple vendors, checking the reviews, seeing if you can get referrals from people. I think when it comes to, there's so much out there online now and so much information about a lot of these products and vendors and things like that. It's really just making sure you're doing your homework and trying to talk to people that have used them and get referrals, and really see people that have truly used a lot of these vendors and manufacturers for their projects.
Yeah, what's good is when you have a good project and a good PM and a great company, right? They'll know the good people, and the good people will want to work for them, because the bad contractors know the idiots, right?
Mm-hmm.
The good people know the good people. Now, if you're talking about Boston, you talk about any of the top 10 builders, whether you're talking about KBC, Thought Forms, the guys that really do Youngblood, a whole bunch of these guys. I could mention 10 of them. I'm probably doing a disservice to not mention more. They all have the best subs. They all have the best subs, right? So typically what's going to happen is once you hire them, they'll make recommendations, and they'll give you like 3 bids for 3 people that they're comfortable working with. That's one way to go. Or the other thing is just to do it. That's what a GC does, is pick all that stuff. So you get the great GC. The great GC is not going to hire an idiot, because if that guy doesn't show up, that whole project just, it just throws everything into a free fall. So really the key is getting the PM and then doing some homework for yourself too, as well. But the good GCs know the good people, will lock them up because they pay them weekly, right? That's the whole trick, is they pay them every week. Whereas a lot of people hold back, wait to the end of the job. Those are the bad ones, right? So it's kind of how it works.
A question in the chat about gas cooking. Do you have any info regarding likelihood of gas being legislated or banned in Massachusetts? Can a town ban it, or would it be a state issue?
Well, this has gone on. This is, it's funny. I remember there was the KEG group, California Electric Group, were the first advocates for induction. Now they've got earthquakes that ruin gas lines and all that other stuff. And I couldn't believe it, but they got the first municipalities to ban gas ranges. I don't think you're going to find it in homes, but in multifamily, you can't do it in Boston anymore. Can't do it in Cambridge. I think Brookline's next, where if you own a multifamily of, I'm not sure what the actual number is, but there's ramifications to this, because they can't ban gas ranges, because what's happening is now you're going from 12 amps to 50 amps. Gas only takes 12 amps. Induction takes 50. Now, if you think you're going to unplug your gas range and plug in an electrical plug-in in a 50 amp induction, ain't happening. You've got to change the circuit from the box, rewire to the circuit. I mean, we did a blog post on 6 steps you have to do to be able to do that. And then, someone's going to tell the government, you're going to have 35 amps per house times the houses that do this. So where's that extra power being generated? I don't see that in single houses just yet. I might be wrong. But for municipalities, I think New York, Boston, I think there's more that'll do it next.
Next up, this is a question we hear all the time. Should all appliances be from the same brand? So if somebody's planning a whole kitchen, do they need to choose one brand?
Yeah, I don't think so. And I think a lot of that's really changed too over the last few years or so. Certainly, of course, manufacturers are going to put together packages and rebate if you stay within the same brands, and then all the stainless steel matches, the handles match, and all that. But I definitely wouldn't say it's a necessity. You see a lot of customers that, they want to, and two, kind of goes back to how you budget, like what's the most important thing to you. So for a lot of people, it's, I want to make sure that I'm going to splurge and spend a little extra on the range, or maybe I'm going to splurge and get a little bit more on the steam oven and the wall oven combination, that sort of thing. And you kind of can get the best of that and maybe the best of the cooktop and the best refrigerator that fits your needs. So I wouldn't say it's a necessity. If you're someone that definitely needs to make sure all the stainless steel is the same, all the handles are going to match, all those things. And certainly from a pricing standpoint, not to always say it's going to be cheaper, even if you stay within the same brand, because you can certainly value engineer that as well and get different brands and still get a great value with great appliances. But if you're someone that wants to make sure all the stainless matches, all the handles are exactly the same, then I would say yes. But we see a lot of really kind of all types of kitchens from every price range, really kind of mix and match. You see a little bit of both for sure.
I think you save money if you do, but over a long term, depending on how much depending on how long you stay, over a 10-year period, you could save, like Fisher Bagel's got $2,700 rebate. So you subtract a piece, now it's $1,500. So over 10 years, it's $120 per year. I think the more that you panelize, the less important it becomes. For affordable luxury, I would tend to say you should, only because the rebates are better. And really, there's only a couple distinct products. I mean, dishwashers are kind of dishwashers. I mean, there's better than others. I think the stove, refrigerator kind of drive it. Over-the-range microwaves are the same, which everyone's buying, unfortunately. So I think that, and I think candle styles are, they were once kind of like overt, like, big handle. Now you see a lot of pocket handles where it doesn't much matter anymore. It's just something to put your hand in. So.
The question in the chat, your comment about electrical system changes going from gas to induction. What about a traditional electric range to induction?
I think you should be okay. Depends on the amps and how old it is. Most electric ranges are 40, you may need 50. Depending. If you go Bosch, it could be straight shot. It depends on the amps there. But there may be some changeover, may not be, depending what you got.
Yeah, sometimes you might go from a 3-prong to a 4-prong. A lot of the new induction ranges could still go either 3 or 4. You might have a few here or there that are pre-wired to 4. So yeah, like Steve said, for the most part, you should be good, but there could be, case by case could have a few changes.
Let's dive back into a product question. Would like to know that what is the major difference between cooking and dual ovens from Wolf and Thermador? Those are high-end brands. What are any major differences there?
Well, that's a good question, depending on what we're talking about. Wolf's gone to a blower convection, right? Which means that because blowers, like if you look at ventilation, you don't see fans really in anything that's powerful. They've gone to a blower convection that's increased the size of their ovens. They've got that Wolf Gourmet, which I think is such a good interface, where it tells you, you put in what you're cooking and how you like it. It'll give you time, temperature, rack position. That's good. But Thermo's got decent features and a better price. They still pretty much single convection. I like some of the pro ranges. They have the star burner, which is raised, so it's easier to clean. They'll put the steam oven in theirs. They have more options per se in wall ovens and steam than Wolf does. It really depends. And Wolf is, I mean, although it's not as much, Thermidor is about 10% less than a Wolf, I would say, right now.
Yeah, with the whole package and everything else, yeah.
Last call for any questions in the Q&A here. We have a few more to get to from registration. Question from the chat here. Can you talk a little bit about Gagano cooktops and oven compared to other brands for an urban condo? Gagano is a little bit different style. Anything else to consider there?
Yeah, I'd say too, with Gagano, what you're gonna get it for someone that truly loves to cook and really in their wall ovens, and they make a phenomenal product, but you also get a lot more control, I'd say, than you would with a lot of other brands. Everything from, when you have a steam oven, exactly how much steam is being incorporated and being used. You can pick certain parts of the heating and baking and broiling element. So figuring out just one part of that broil element as well. So it gives you a lot more control. But still kind of, once you learn how to use it, still pretty easy to use product as well. So you can kind of use it just like anything else. But I would say for someone that really loves to cook, it probably gives you a little bit more control than a lot of other brands as well.
I would agree. I think their products are the best. Steam oven, controlling the steam. If you really love to cook and get into the minutia of how you want it done perfectly, then Gagano has a mode for that. Period. They're the only ones that do. Not to say, Miele and Wolf, however, more intuitive. So if you want to say, I want a steam oven, I never used that. I would, the Miele Master Chef says, okay, what are we steaming? Okay, chicken, what's the poundage on it? Okay, it's 2 pounds. How do you like it? Hit this button right here. Boop. And now you have a steamed chicken perfectly. But if you want it like poached a certain way, then Gagano is the one for you.
Time for a couple more questions here. We have about 3 or 4 questions to get through. Rapid fire here, guys. This is a product question. Recently moved, used to have a Fisher Paykel refrigerator, but I would like a counter depth refrigerator with ice. Any recommendations for counter depth with ice?
Yeah, there's a lot of them there. So everything from LG, Bosch, Fisher Paykel still makes a great refrigerator. On some of these LGs too, you have some cool features with kind of standard ice coming through the door, some kind of cool big balls of craft ice that they make in the freezer, which is good for drinks. So, there's really a lot of options there for sure.
Fisher Paykel is making it now, aren't they?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you get tons of options there. I think LG is the most reliable though, of the ones with ice dispensers.
A couple of questions about layout. How much space is needed between an island and the other cabinetry in a small L-shaped kitchen?
Well, the common one is 36 to 44. That's 36 to 44, if I'm not mistaken, and 44 to 48, depending. If you want people passing through, you want a little bit more, but no more, that's the dimension. Now, a lot of these kitchens that you'll see online, those are display kitchens where, they're not something you should look at, like that sink I showed you in the studio. But I would say I would start at 36 and 36 to 48 and see how that looks. Those are the most common dimensions.
And then I think finally, how do you maximize space and utility with a small kitchen? We've heard that question a lot before.
Well, from an appliance standpoint, you can do any number of things, right? Here's where I would start if you're doing it. The difference between a 24 and an 18-inch dishwasher capacity is not that much. So you can cut that down from 24 to 18. There's all sorts of places to do it. If you're really talking about a studio, you could do a cooktop and an over-the-range microwave convection. I know I've said I don't like them, but it's certainly a way to do that. The steam oven we're talking about, you can do any number of things. And here's the great thing, there's a lot of countertop appliances you can use that'll air fryers and everything that'll cook for you as well. So it really depends on the space and what you want. But I don't like cutting down the range. But when you go from a 30 to a 24-inch range, you really cut down brands. You don't save any money, and you cut down functionality. Refrigerator, the same thing too. I'd stick to at least an 18 cubic foot, although there's some cool European ones. But the funny thing is, when you cut down the appliance, you're actually paying more. So it's crazy. But you can do any number of ways. If you want to ask a more specific question, or anybody who does, Pat will take them and we'll be happy to answer them for you. But you could do the options are limitless as far as what you can do to cut down space.
Thank you, Steve. Thank you, Fran. We will be, like I said earlier, we'll be sharing this recording with everybody. So be on the lookout from that as your email. And yes, if any questions come in, just reply and we can follow up. And this will be posted on YouTube along with all of our other previous webinars. And with that, that's gonna be all from us. Have a great day. Thanks for stopping by.
Thank you.
Thank you.